Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Informed Chiropractor. This is Dr. Don Macdonald, your host, and today I get to go flying over to Australia and have a nice chat with a wonderful chiropractor that we only just met in June of last year at our Macdonald Safety Corridor event we had in Sydney, Australia. And then since then, she joined our group. She did our 90-day mentoring program, and now she's in Body by Brandy. And so she's done a lot of stuff with us, and we've really been fascinated with her story. She's graduated from Macquarie University, been in practice for 24 years. And yeah, she has a fascinating story. She likes to apparently walk, but we'll get into that in a second. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Rachel Swain.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
This is awesome. I always like to start off our interviews with a little bit of origin story about how you even found out of this crazy profession in the first place.
I was lucky enough to have my mum and dad take me to a chiropractor when I was 12. And I was always fascinated by the body. And so, yeah, one thing led to another. And I was so fortunate to have incredible mentors when I first started out. And I feel really, really lucky to have found chiropractic.
That's cool because you currently practiced like outside of Sydney, right? You're still in
Yeah,
like the New
that's
South
right.
Wales. It's not that far from Sydney, is it?
No, about an hour and a half north of Sydney.
Hour and a
Yeah.
half. And is that where you grew up, or like where did you actually grow up?
Yeah, I actually grew up not far from where I live now, so on the Central Coast.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
it's a beautiful part of the world.
Yes, and as we always talk to Rachel, she always lives with like close to a beach. She likes that beach view, which we, as we're sitting freezing cold in Edmonton, Alberta, which we wish we could have that.
Yeah.
And did you just basically pick chiropractic to go to school in Sydney because it was so close? It was just from the location.
Yes, the only other course offered at that time was in Melbourne, so I was a bit further away.
Hmm. And so when you went into chiropractic school, because I think, like, as we talk about in the profession, we always have that kind of pain-based model all the way to that vitalistic, maximize function model. Did you have an experience on that kind of vitalistic model before you went to school, or was that something that developed after you already graduated?
Like I said, I was lucky enough to have amazing mentors. So I actually got to have that before I went to university and throughout uni. I was a bit of an anomaly, I think, in my class, but I remember going to see Reggie Gold speak the week before I actually started at university.
Wow. Well, that's good. So tell me a little bit about the mentors before you even started school. Like, was it actually the chiropractor you were going to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr. Lisa Sheldon, amazing, amazing woman and chiropractor. And then through her, I met Dr. James Carter. So I did a lot of work with him for the first few years in my practice as well. So I was really, really fortunate.
That's good. And so you actually, did you meet him before school, before you went to school?
Yeah, he was working in Dr. Lisa's practice. And so he would adjust
Ah,
me from time to time. And then I worked with him as an assistant. And then, yeah, and then did a lot of his courses and did some coaching for him when I was living in Canada. So, yeah.
that's pretty funny because like it's pretty cool to be hooked up with someone like that because uh, Dr. James Carter, we actually just met him when we did the first Parker seminar that Brandy spoke at in Melbourne. I think it was in 2009, and we had met him. He'd retired at that point. But it's funny
Yeah.
is that the more Australian chiropractors we met, like he mentored so many Australian chiropractors. Maybe tell a little bit of the listeners about him.
So my understanding, he went to Parker over in the States, and oh no, sorry, I'm getting that wrong. He went to CMCC,
Oh yeah,
and
because he's Canadian, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
Canadian.
yeah.
So he's Australian. Went to school in Canada,
Oh, that's right.
um, and then came back to Australia. And then he was doing some like professional development courses in Canada. And then when he moved back to Australia, he started those up as well. So you're right. A lot of the chiropractors you've probably worked with and that I've known for most of my career have done some form of his work, and he had such a big influence on chiropractic here in Australia.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool to hear that because so many people that we've talked to, they're like they've had such a history with him, and so
Yeah.
that's pretty exciting. So you graduate. So what did you do immediately after you graduated chiropractic school? Also, just actually, I'm gonna go back a second. because you already had that vitalistic idea of chiropractic before you even started school, how did you find stool? Because there's a lot of students that like to listen to this podcast that kind of, including myself when I went to school, is that I already knew chiropractic as we know it now before I went to school. And then when you go to school, sometimes it's a little bit shocking. So what was your experience in school?
I think that I was a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah.
Um, we had very minimal in terms of philosophy, but we had the great John Kelly teaching us, thankfully. I found it really frustrating. I pretty much just got in, got what I had to do done so I could get out and start practicing. And I came out of school and started working with Lisa Sheldon, and in her practice, which I was, yeah, again, so fortunate to do.
That's so immediately after you graduated, then it was an associateship. Is that what you did?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Let's go. So how long did you do that for?
I think it was about 3 years, and then I decided I wanted to travel a bit. So I ended up inadvertently in Canada. I lived there for a year, and I did a lot of Dr. Carter's work while I was over there, just teaching workshops and helping in their seminars and things like that. So I know a bunch of Canadian chiropractors too, thankfully. They're
That's
amazing.
great. And James Carter, he did kind of, did he go back and forth between teaching in Australia and Canada? Is that the main, or did he go all over the place?
Yeah, no, mainly between Canada and Australia.
Okay,
Yeah.
between Canada and Australia. Okay, that's cool. And so when did you decide to open your own practice?
Probably. Oh gosh, maybe 2 years after I'd come back from overseas. I'd gone back to practice with Lisa, and then it was just time. So yeah, we had an agreement. I moved my patient base and yeah, opened my own doors. That was a long time ago. Maybe 15, 16 years ago or longer. Oh
Oh,
gosh, I can't remember.
and so when you first opened your practice, what were some of the things that you had to do initially to get your name out there? Because it's kind of when you start, you still had a few patients that knew of you before, so that was kind of nice because you had a base. You didn't start from zero,
Yeah.
but how was those first few years opening on your own?
They were pretty good because I had established a pretty busy practice before I'd left. So most of the people came with me. So, but yeah, you're right. There was definitely it was challenging in some ways, but I probably did more things like screenings at kids' day outs and things like that. But yeah, I love the challenge of trying to keep growing my practice. So yeah.
And when did you first start getting or hearing about these pilgrimages that you've been walking on? That all start? The walking chiropractor.
Well, I got to 2022, and it had been a really, it had been a big couple of years for various reasons, and COVID kind of just, topped it off. And I'd said to a mentor that I'd had at the time, I was like, I need to have a break. I'm going to take a month off work. I'm going to go camping and and do a road trip. And he said, no, you need an adventure. How about you? He just moved to Portugal a year before, and he said, how about you come to Portugal? We'll create an event, and then you can go and do some traveling. I was like, oh, absolutely, sounds great. I mentioned it to a teacher of mine, and she said, well, while you're there, why don't you go and walk the Camino? And I was like, oh, never really, I'd heard of it, but I'd never thought about it. And so I went home that afternoon and I put in Portugal and Camino, and lo and behold, there it was a Portuguese Camino, and it fitted perfectly into the time frame that I had.
Oh,
And so
wow.
yeah, so 6 weeks later, I was walking a pilgrimage in Portugal up to Spain.
So just for the listeners, how long do you have to walk here in these pilgrimages? Or I guess they're all different, but how long was this one?
Yeah, they're all different. This particular one was about 275 kilometers.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just like to look it up online and say, hey, I should try this, and then go in a month and then walk 200 kilometers. And then after that, you kind of got a little bit hooked on it. Like you really enjoyed it.
Oh, I just loved it. There was something, it's a really hard thing to explain to people, but I think probably halfway through the first one, I thought, I love this. I'm going to come back and walk. I knew I'd walk the more traditional one that people have probably heard about, the Frances route. So I did that just over 12 months later. So yeah.
That's good. And that's actually sparked some of the future inspirations for you, right? I see you're planning a walk, right, to take people with you, right? And is
Yeah.
that's coming up? So you have a little group. What tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in October, I'm going to be taking a small group of people with me. So we'll be walking the Portuguese route. But the idea is to help people prepare not just for the walking, but for the experience of pilgrimage. So, body, mind, and spirit. So most of it's kind of the opposite of what's offered out there at the moment. So, there's definitely groups who, organize things for you. Walk with you and guide you on the actual route. Mine's the opposite, really. It's let's prepare you and then we go walk together, and then we'll come back and we'll integrate what we've come up with. Back into life again.
That's cool. And down the road, you kind of would like to do that like regularly, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm already planning two more next year because there's been such great interest, and so yeah, I think that'll be something that will be part of my life forever. I just
That's cool. So any listeners out there, if you want to go on a pilgrimage, you now
yeah,
can contact Dr. Rachel, and she will get you hooked up if you want to walk for
yeah.
200 or so. And again, what are the ranges of those? Are they all around the same, or is there quite a difference in the ranges?
No, they're all very different,
Yeah.
So I walked one mid last year, and it was 400 kilometers. I just walked one in Japan in November, and it was only 80, but oh my gosh, the hardest 80Ks I think I've ever done. But my probably I wouldn't say my favorite, but the one that really I kind of got under my skin was the Francis route, and that was I walked 900 kilometers in that one. So
Oh,
yeah.
jeepers. Wow,
Incredible.
that's funny. That's yeah. Yeah, I think you just have to do it like and how many days do you do it over? Like I know they probably all different, but
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the person. It depends on your
yeah, yeah.
fitness. It depends on how much time you
Because
have.
again, you just walk it, right? So it's not a set timeline. You just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, and I like to, the whole idea for me in the beginning was to walk into the unknown. So I didn't have a lot of planning around it. I didn't know where I was going to stay. So I knew I had a rough, 2 weeks to be able to complete it. But I like to walk without a lot of knowns. So, yeah, which is a little bit different from, most people's holidays.
Well, that's funny because yeah, because you like just like Brandy, you've done a lot of Joe Dispenza's work. So we always talked about the
Yeah.
getting in the unknowns, which again, if people are addicted to certainty, that's really challenging for them.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 absolutely. Oh gosh. I mean, that's where I came from. Certainty, control, no, planning. I
Yeah.
had lived my days off, things to do on my days off. So it
Uh,
was a massive, massive shift for me.
yeah, that's funny. So I'm always super interested because when we do seminars and we meet someone for the first time, which was when we met you in June, and you've had such an extensive history in chiropractic and mentoring and coaching and a successful practice. Um, I'm just kind of always curious, what was it that kind of sparked your interest to actually come out to our event last June?
I think about 2, 3 years before, I really wanted. I was at a bit of a crossroads. Like I said, it had been a tough couple of years, and in terms of my career, like I love chiropractic. I love what I do. I just find it is such yeah, it's such meaningful work. I really feel so blessed to have found it. But I was getting to a point where I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this for much longer. I needed a level of mastery if I was going to continue, and I also needed to. I think it was I mentioned to you at the seminar that I couldn't figure out what was going on with people. Doing the same things that I'd done for all of time that had been successful, and then all of a sudden just not, really, really struggling to help people. And so that was probably the biggest thing for me, was having those tools to be able to help people through what we've all experienced in the last few years.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
and again, going into the polyvagal theory, that's kind of like what we've done for the Macdonald safety corridors, kind of take that polyvagal lens, not only take it through your kind of assessment and adjusting, but just see through your communication and your expectations on chiropractic care. And so, what are some of the things that have been helpful for you, kind of understanding that the polyvagal theory? and a little bit of stuff with the safety corridor that you've been able to implement in your practice?
Mm. I think some of it I was doing intuitively. I didn't
Mhm.
realize. Now
Yeah.
having a like a system or a protocol for it, but understanding the why behind it as well, that's just been invaluable. I think the biggest thing though has been what it's done for me as a person. Uh, there are, oh my goodness, it's changed my life. And so I think then the biggest thing is the ripple effect that I have with my patients and in my practice and my community. And I love going to work at the moment. The things that people are telling me, like I had a woman in her 50s the other day. She's a teacher. She just beautiful woman, and she said to me, she came in, she said, I don't know what's different, but I feel like I can speak my mind. She said, I'm not putting up with things anymore, and I can just say it as it is. And I'm like, oh, who would have thought? So, having those kinds of conversations now with other people, I think because I'm feeling that within myself. So
Mhm.
that's probably been the biggest part of it. But like I said, having the hands-on to be able to affect those kinds of changes in
Mhm.
practice. Yeah.
Well, I find too, because like understanding or making sense out of what you're experiencing in your health or your body is probably one of the most important things. And I think that's what we found with a lot of chiropractors. And that's actually what really has helped me too, is just when you understand what's going on in your own body,
Mm.
and it makes more sense to you, right? Because
Yeah.
like I said, we were big into the sympathetics are bad, parasympathetics good, and everybody's just trying to get them all parasympathetic, and then all of a sudden you learn like, oh, there's new advances that actually there's one more level, and it doesn't necessarily mean sympathetics are bad as long as we're in a state of safety. Like that's actually play. That's the pilgrimage. That's like walking with
Yeah.
that is the blended state of play. Um, and but then in a state of danger or neurological threat, we always have to say neurological threat because it's below our cognitive awareness. Then the sympathetics or the dorsal vagal aspect is kind of dangerous. And when you're dealing with a practice member, because most of everybody's in threat, so basically 100% are in that bottom quadrant, whether they're threat sympathetic or they're threat dorsal, pretty much all of them. But how you'd actually address each one is different, just in your mindset, because we know now that we know from the polyvagal theory. And so I think that's kind of a cool thing that I've really noticed. And it's funny because we actually went from doing the seminar to you joined the Informed Chiropractor, then you did the 90 days. And so I'm also kind of curious on what was your kind of what was your since it's been a while, I think we ended it in December. Yeah,
Yeah.
beginning of December. What was your kind of biggest takeaways? Because again, a lot of times the 90-day stuff, again, that's more about you. But the
Yeah.
great thing about chiropractic is the more evolved you get, it just bleeds all into your practice. And so
Oh, yeah,
it's
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I inadvertently did the 90 days. I think I reached out to ask, a question about statistics and ended up in the 90-day program, which was one of the best things I've ever done, by the way. It was incredible. I think the big things for me were I didn't realize how tapped out I was. And so now I know, like, for me, the first step is always awareness. I had no awareness. I think that was intuitively part of the reason I started walking pilgrimage because I was so frozen for such a long time for so many reasons.
Yeah.
I call them my pentagon of pain: pleasing, performing, perfecting, procrastinating, and peacemaking.
Oh, there
And
you go. That's a good one.
yeah, and that was my life. And I started walking through this and got to see some of that. And then the coaching, the 90 days just took it to a whole new level. And for me, probably the two big things were dealing with the outstanding distresses in my life, and dealing with the things left unsaid. So yeah, it's just changed my life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So I can't thank you guys enough for that. And then that's just led into doing the work with Brandy now.
Yeah, the body by Brandy.
Brandy. Oh my gosh. I mentioned to you earlier that, oh my gosh, I think I actually love the gym.
Yeah,
Which is,
totally. And then she also said, "Ooh, my pecs are killing me today." So I'm
yeah,
like, "Well, there you go. You're starting
yeah,
to develop some muscles, which is really good."
it's
That
working.
yeah. That's awesome. And so I always like just it's funny because we do have the honor to work with so many chiropractors with so many years of experience. It's like we usually don't attract like, the first like 2 years of practice kind of chiropractors. It's more like 10 or 20 or 30 or something. So just if you were to kind of maybe talk to your younger self, kind of almost as a mentor. What kind of words of wisdom would you give your younger self if you could actually kind of zip back in time and talk to your younger self?
Oh gosh. A really good one. I think it comes back to trusting myself, like really having that interoception. What is actually going on in there? What is my body saying to me? What is my heart saying to me? Like really being able to listen to myself and to trust it.
And that's a tough one. That's like it's hard, right?
That's like a life's work, I think.
That's why it's kind of funny because a lot of people they say, well, I had to go through the things I had to go to. It's almost like it's like almost like an addict or something, right? Where you got to hit rock bottom and then you have to go like, uh
Yeah, it was a bit like that for me. It was like I'm out of here. I'm tapping out. I'm gonna go live on my farm with, some goats in a yurt. I couldn't. Yeah, it was, not rock bottom, but it was not great. And so I think, yeah, you're right. Those experiences previously had led me to that point. But now being able to, I often talk about zooming out and going, oh wow, that's where I was at, or that was there for to teach me. So I'm sure there'll be plenty more zooming out moments in my life, but thankfully they get quicker and quicker to move through.
Yeah, well, in this way, and I just think that's kind of the nice thing about aging. Like I actually that I enjoy too is that you just get more involved. Like hopefully we're creating wisdom. I tease my practice members. I said our body might be a little bit more ornery as far as our exercise and not recover as quick, but that's usually why we're ideally should be developing our wisdom so that we can so you can learn how to deal with those things, right? So.
Yeah, yeah,
So we're kind of coming to the end here, but like we have, chiropractors in the gym or driving to work and they might be
yeah.
feeling a little bit lost or maybe feeling how you were, where they're tapped out and they want to go and live on a farm and just have
Yeah.
some llamas to hang out with or something. What kind of words of inspiration would you like to leave them with today?
Oh, I think it is definitely all there within you. I think a big part of it for me is finding the right people, finding my people, and yeah, one of my other a friend of mine talks about 20 seconds of courage. And it's something I've been trying to lean into in the last couple of years. It's just those 20 seconds of, it's going to be uncomfortable, but just leaning into, trying something that's different because, oh my gosh, you never know where it can take you. It could take you 900 kilometers across a country. So, yeah. So, 20 seconds of courage and then lean into it. That would be my advice.
That's awesome. Well, that's great. Well, we're looking forward to seeing you again in June. For
Yeah.
we're doing our lower spine with our lower safety corridor, pelvis and hips and all that stuff. And then
Yeah.
we've just kind of revamped the team event. We've kind of renamed it. It's funny because we were calling it the Relevancy Accelerator, and then people weren't quite sure what it was, so we had to actually make it more relevant. So we actually kind of because it is a new event that we're putting on, and so we're just creating it as we go. So it'll be good. You're already registered, but it's going to be good. It's
Yep.
going to be good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we'll we'll
Can't
we'll
wait.
we'll look forward to seeing you in Sydney in June. And for everybody else out there, I hope you guys are all doing amazing. Lots of great pearls of wisdom in this episode, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Take care.